Almost exactly 20 years ago today, I faced what seemed like an impossible task. Not even ordained yet as a rabbi, I found myself leading the alternative High Holy Day service at Stephen Wise Free Synagogue on the Upper West Side. Rosh Hashanah that year was 6 days after 9/11. And taking the advice of my wise mentors, I scrapped my sermon plans and quickly shifted to craft a new message. Standing there on the pulpit in New York City just after 9/11, my goal was to establish a safe haven for those who gathered. I shared words from my heart and created a space where others could share their personal experiences. Many of the stories that I heard that day became ingrained in my memory, alongside what Jennifer and I each experienced on 9/11. Every one of those memories still vivid and fresh 2 decades later. One story came from a gentleman who had been in the Pentagon on 9/11. He shared that on September 10th, he purchased a mezuzah on his way home that he planned to bring to his mother in New York City. When he arrived at the office on the morning of September 11th, he discovered that by accident he had left that mezuzah in his briefcase. Just a moment after finding the mezuzah, the entire building shook and alarm bells began going off. The plane had struck the Pentagon. Grabbing his briefcase with that mezuzah still inside, he ran through the corridors of the Pentagon, his senses overwhelmed by the blaring alarms and the smell of smoke. Several times along the way, he encountered places where he had to quickly choose which hallway to take. Somehow, miraculously, he chose the right path every single time, reaching safety and avoiding every area where he would have been trapped. Having made it to New York in time for the High Holy Days, there at our Rosh Hashanah service, he still could not believe his good fortune. As he finished telling us his story, he looked around and said, "I felt like I was not alone. There is something, some power guiding me through those hallways. I never knew it before that moment, but God was there with me." As we mark this 20th anniversary of 9/11, I find myself, friends, feeling an eerie similarity between those High Holy Days in 2001 and these in 2021. The sense of unease, the frustration, the lack of control during this pandemic mirrors some of the emotions that we felt in the aftermath of September 11th. Just like then, we search for understanding, hoping to feel God's presence, to discover some clue that might calm our fears. Lasting now for more than 18 months, COVID-19 continues to keep us imprisoned on an emotional roller coaster that just never seems to end. Just when we feel the station is in sight, we find ourselves whipped away through another series of curves, loops, and stomach-dropping terror. What we hoped to be 6 to 8 weeks turned into 6 to 8 months, and now more than a year and a half. What seemed like a miracle with a vaccine in record time continues to elude us, with far too many resisting that scientific salvation. Even with the vaccine and with booster shots, our fear levels still are high. We do not know who is infected, where we are at risk, or what that next variant may bring. We can only control our own actions, taking vaccinations, wearing masks, being cautious, but some of even the most careful, fully vaccinated individuals still find themselves battling the disease. Truly, the scope of tragedy leaves us speechless. It's hard to believe that we've surpassed 650,000 deaths from COVID in America. That's the equivalent of having experienced the losses from 9/11 every 2.5 days since this started. That's not to mention the almost 4 million more deaths that have taken place around the world from this disease. In the midst of all of this ongoing struggle, we come to this night infused with language focusing on our mortality. The haunting words of the Unatana Tokef prayer that we'll chant tomorrow and that we chanted on Rosh Hashanah have moved now from the liturgical poetry into the reality of our world. Who shall live and who shall die? Who shall die by floods and who shall be consumed by fire? Who shall die of disease or plague? So many of us never really related to the power of those words, but today, this is our reality. The Unatana Tokef is here. Shaken by this situation, we desperately want to feel like that man did in the Pentagon, that God is with us, that we are not alone. Many of us seek a theology that makes sense for us as adults, something more meaningful than that pediatric image we have of the old man sitting on a throne in the sky. As people of faith, we yearn to know that there is someone or something, be it a force or power beyond ourselves, that's at the controls as our roller coaster car of life barrels along the tracks. A few years ago, Rabbi Jack Bemporad, a new way to think about theology, starting with the notion that all of us have been taught some unrealistic and unhealthy ways to conceive of God. They humorously note that some of us learned about God, the cosmic bellhop, a divine being available to take care of all your needs while you are here in life. This God will help you with your mortgage and intercede with your boss. Just ring the bell for service, broke, or praise God when you win the lottery. Others among us have learned about the wrathful Marquis de God, a fearful divine being punishing all those who transgress with great anger and vengeance. In their book titled Stupid Ways, Smart Ways to Think About God, Bemporad and Shevak challenge these limited views of God as unrealistic and the source of frustration for so many who feel alienated by religion. For example, those who are taught about God, the cosmic bellhop, grow disillusioned when their prayers are not answered each time just as they requested them. Instead, Shevak and Bemporad suggest that one should be smart in thinking about God, that we should change the paradigm and start thinking about God in new ways. Perhaps the best place to start is to reshape our theological expectations. You may be familiar with a story about the person whose community is experiencing a terrible flood. As the waters start to rise, a jeep comes by offering to take him to high ground. He declines and says, God will provide. As the water rises, he goes to the second floor of his home, and a woman comes by in a boat offering him a ride to safety. He declines again and says, God will provide. Forced by the water to go to the roof of his home, a helicopter with a ladder appears, offering to fly him away. He once more declines, saying, God will provide. Sadly, the waters finally reach him and he is swept away to his demise. A short time later in the world to come, he encounters God. Why didn't you save me? The man asks. I am pious and faithful. I kept waiting for you to provide. And the Holy One retorts, just whom do you think provided the jeep, the boat, and the helicopter? The only thing I forgot to provide was seichel. For many, our default expectation is for the divine presence to make itself known through awe-inspiring physical manifestations, the thunder and lightning at Mount Sinai, the burning bush, the 10 plagues. But these unrealistic images condition us to wait for the proverbial floodwaters to magically recede, rather than being open to all the other pathways for salvation. Instead of looking for miraculous signs, let us return to a teaching from our tradition. When Jacob awoke from his iconic dream of divine messengers on the ladder, he said, "God was in this place, and I did not know it." The sages note that the divine messengers are described by Jacob as going up and then coming back down the ladder. And they ask, why are they going up first? The answer is to indicate that during the daytime, God's presence and the divine messengers are all around us, even though we may not know it. At night, they ascend to heaven briefly before returning back to the earth to do more good deeds the next day. If we open our eyes and awaken like Jacob, we too will recognize the work of divine messengers around us, those who are making our world more whole and holy with jeeps, boats, helicopters, and so much more. A few years ago, I heard the true story of a girl who wrote this letter after her dog died. "Dear God, will you please take care of my dog? Her name is Abby. She died yesterday and is now with you in heaven. I miss her very much. I'm happy that you let me have her as my dog, even though she got sick. I hope you will play with her. She likes to swim and play with balls. I'm sending a picture of her so that when you see her, you will know that she is my dog. I really miss her. Love, Meredith." Addressing her letter to God in heaven, Meredith mailed it along with a photo of herself with Abby. Meredith insisted to her parents that they use as many stamps as possible because it'll take a lot of postage to get all the way to heaven. Just a few days later, Meredith came home from school to find a package wrapped in gold paper with her name on it on the front porch. When she opened it with her parents, she found inside a book from Mr. Rogers called "When a Pet Dies." Her letter to God and her photo with Abby were taped to the inside front cover. On the opposite page was this note: "Dear Meredith, Abby arrived safely in heaven. Having the picture was a big help, and I recognized her right away. Abby isn't sick anymore. Her spirit is here with me, just like it stays in your heart. Abby loved being your dog. Since we don't need our bodies in heaven, I don't have any pockets to keep your picture, so I'm sending it back to you in this little book for you to keep and have something to remember Abby by. Thank you for the beautiful letter, and thank your parents for helping you to write it and send it to me. What wonderful parents you have. I picked them especially for you. I send my blessings every day, and remember, I love you very much. By the way, I'm easy to find. I am wherever there is love. Love, God." Friends, through the work of divine messengers, God was in that place, and little Meredith was not alone. In addition to invisible messengers, we detect God's presence by taking Rabbi Bemporad's smart approach to God. God created humanity in the divine image, so one of the best places to discover God is through God's greatest creation, us. Last summer, a new series, Ted Lasso, appeared on Apple TV+. It spoke to the zeitgeist of this moment. The show follows the life of Ted, an American football coach brought to England to coach a soccer team. Sharply written, the show explores the power of optimism and hope in the face of challenge, messages that we desperately needed to hear during the pandemic. In one pivotal scene, Ted opines that the problem with the world is that we are too quick to judge others. Instead, he offers this quote: "Be curious, not judgmental." Judgment impairs our ability to hope and see the best in others because we think we already know the outcome. However, when we are curious, we look at others with a sense of wonder and awe, genuinely desiring to get to know them without any preconceived assumptions. We remain open to seeing their true potential. Ted's philosophy echoes a Hasidic teaching that each person has two gifts bestowed on them by God. Our task is to discover what those two gifts may be. When we are curious, as Ted advises, we encounter others in a way that we are seeking to find the divine spark within them, to discover their passion or gift, and in doing so, discover God's presence nearby. Walking among us right now are individuals who have gifts that can save lives, as illustrated by the story of Dr. Katalin Kariko. Born in Hungary, Dr. Kariko and her husband came to America in the 1980s to give their daughter a better life. They escaped with the permitted $50 American, as well as an additional 900 British pounds they had secretly sewn into their daughter's teddy bear. When they arrived here with almost nothing, they knew it was going to be difficult. A respected scientist in Hungary, leaving for Dr. Kariko meant giving up all of her professional standing. She found herself at the bottom of the research ladder here in America. Dr. Kariko frequently faced financial struggles in her work, as many of the granting agencies would turn her down, judging her by her lack of an American education. Believing in her research, Dr. Kariko toiled on, persisting, and eventually switching in 2013 to bio and tech. Now we owe her dearly, for it was Dr. Kariko's groundbreaking work on mRNA technology that created the delivery system used by the Pfizer vaccine. Inspired by curiosity for those around us, we will discover the divine spark shining not only in Dr. Kariko, but inside everyone we encounter. If only we take the time to explore and learn about the divine gifts that they have been given and can offer to us. We live in unprecedented times, when the haunting words of our liturgy feel more real than ever before. This pandemic, like other traumas before it, challenges our understanding of the universe, shaking our very faith. But take heart. Know that though we have distanced at times, though we may have felt lonely, we have never been alone. When Ted Lasso first arrived at his team, he installed a sign in the locker room with a single word: believe. It is a mantra that he drills into his players, encouraging them to have faith that they can overcome the obstacles in their way. That same message is there for us as well. Believe that holy messengers are all around us, bringing blessings to the world, giving hope to children, and repairing the brokenness that we see. Believe that within each person are divine gifts that they can share with us, as long as we remain curious, not judgmental. Believe that whatever we may be wrestling with, God is in this place with us. We just have to believe that as we walk the narrow bridge of life, the most important thing is not to be afraid, for we are not alone when we believe. Amen.